Tom Williams, thank you very much for coming on the podcast, buddy. I appreciate it. How the devil are you, sir?
I'm good, thanks, Dean. Yeah, very well. A little bit apprehensive, a little bit nervous. First time being interviewed. I haven't really had too much media training ever since the football career came to an abrupt end at the age of 13. But yeah, I'm good, thank you, mate.
Trust me, I am the least professional interviewer or podcast host you'll ever get. So you'll always do better than me, pal. I don't set a very high barrier.
That's good to know. It's good to know. I've got a little bet going here with myself and Chris, who I think you interviewed last year, and we're going to see who can get the most hits. So the competition's on.
So firstly, obviously you own or you have Willbox containers. How is that doing since the pandemic? Has it affected you guys much? What is the demand like at the minute?
Yeah, so the pandemic in the world of shipping containers was absolutely crazy. Myself personally, I've been with Willbox for about 3 years, selling containers for about 18 years, and I've never known a year like it. With the COVID pandemic, straight away the problem was getting the containers into the UK. So there was a real shortage of units. This was then met with an upsurge in the self-storage industry with people wanting containers. So we met with two quite difficult situations, which we came over. The UK, I think now isn't really hit too much by COVID. We seem to have got past it a little bit. You see people who are not wearing masks and things have got a bit more normality here. Whereas over in China, I don't know if you guys will be aware, obviously there was big lockdowns going on in Shanghai, which only eased at the beginning of June. There could be more lockdowns, and the problem with that is that has a real effect on the supply of the containers into the UK. In the upcoming months, we normally have a lag time of around 3 months from a container in Shanghai or any other place in China coming to the UK. So we could still be affected by a shortage. At the moment, our stock supply is strong. The market is softer than it was this time last year. This is, I think, mainly because there is, unfortunately, we've got economic issues coming. We've got a war going on. Everything's going up. Inflation as well. So it's a little bit of a softer market. But we're still in a strong position. I think getting stock on the ground and being able to offer the product has been the key, and that's the position we're in now. So it's always challenging, but it's certainly not a boring industry to be involved in, and one I wouldn't change anyway.
So basically, during COVID, you had more demand and less supply. That's a great recipe.
Yes, yeah. We had waiting lists. So I had waiting lists going on where I was having to supply people after 6 months of them making the initial inquiry, which is something we've never ever had before. And now it's gone back to normal sort of lead times where containers can be supplied at pretty much a click of a button, a phone call, and the paperwork sorted. So we're back to a little bit of normality. What it's going to be like towards the back end of this year is yet to be seen with what happens over in the Far East. But yeah, it was certainly, in terms of a business recipe last year, having the strongest supply would have been perfect, but the supply was a little bit weaker. So the waiting lists were there, but obviously as a business, your exposure to risk there wasn't there because the demand was so strong for us.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you say the market's softer than this year, is that because there was increased demand last year, or is it going below normal levels for June?
I wouldn't say it's dropped below normal levels for June. I think it's the problem when you have such a busy year as last year, expectations can become a little bit higher. Container price has risen as well, which is obviously going to slow up a little bit of demand because people will start questioning it. It's we haven't hit any stage where we're thinking, oh, the market has downturned. It's just become a little bit more normal, which after 18 months of the craziness we've all been through, the normality does seem a little bit strange. But when I say softer, it is becoming softer to what it was, but it's certainly the bottom end hasn't fallen off of it at all. It's still going, and yeah, it's just it would be nice to have a couple more orders in, as ever. Well, even when you're busy, you want a couple more orders in. But the softening is always going to happen when we have everything that's going on around the world with the inflation and the war over in Ukraine as well. People are a little bit more apprehensive about putting their money in their pocket and starting new ventures, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting you say, because I think you're hitting the nail on the head there. It's expectations. So obviously, the last 2 years we've had incredible years. The jump that we've had in revenue, net profit, etc., has really accelerated, and it's been fantastic. And then this year, it's gone back to where it was previously. And you're thinking, well, holy shit, that means we're having a bad year. But then you look back at the previous years before COVID, and you're thinking, well, actually, we're not. We're actually in line, or if not, just a little bit further ahead of where we'd normally be. But your expectations rise. And I've always got to remember that I always tell people that you've got to be incredibly lucky in business as well. Like in my family, my sisters had a wedding business, and that was probably one of the worst hit industries because you couldn't have any weddings. And so while we was accelerating and excelling, they was in a world of pain, a world of trouble. And I've got to remember my expectations now. I look at my sister's company, and unfortunately I had to sell their company. It wasn't a good ending. And I just felt so sorry for them, because it was no fault of her own. It was a very strong business before that. And so I've got to look at my expectations and think, you know what, you can't have your increased expectations of what happened during COVID and continue to happen. And what I've recently done before we press record, you was actually getting me really excited about container sites, because I don't know if you've listened to, basically I've done a podcast episode saying that I'm just going to halt my expansion plans for indoor self-storage because of the inflation, the economic climate, the war, etc. I don't really know what's happening or what's around the corner. Is it going to continue? Are people still going to want storage? And yes, we haven't ever been in a situation like this. We've been in similar situations with recessions, etc. But I've never been through this cycle before. I don't know what's going to happen. And to place a £1.2 million shop fitting bet, I just don't feel like I can do it. However, with containers, it's slightly different, because you're not overexposed like you are with indoor storage. And like we were just saying, you can change what your original plans were. You can change them at a drop of a hat. So you might order 10 containers at first, and if them 10 containers don't fill, then guess what? You don't have to go to phase 2. It's a lot cheaper. And so after we was talking, I said to you, I'm getting so excited, because container sites, I think, could be the way to expand into the market. I'd love to hear your opinion on that.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. The flexibility of a container site over an indoor site is there for most people to see, and it is, like you say, you can change the phases of the delivery of the units, so you're not overexposing yourself. That's the first thing. You're also, with containers, you're always getting an asset or a commodity. So whatever happens to the business, and obviously we hope that every business or every self-storage site that sets up and is well run does succeed. But if it doesn't, for whatever reason, then you do have something that has a resale value. And with shipping containers at the moment, the resale value of units that were sold 5 years ago as the once used containers and new containers, their resale value has actually gone up compared to what the price they would have paid. So that is always something to fall back on it if needed. And I think with containers, we've started to notice with us, not only new people coming into the industry. I think the SSA recently said one of the meetings, 2/3 of the members that joined this year have been involved in the container setup of sites, self-storage sites. So that shows how much it is sort of growing. But we're seeing hybrid sites popping up. We're seeing Safe Store and Lock and Store starting to do a little bit more with land or car parks that aren't being used. They're seeing the benefits of containers. So it's not only the new people coming in, it's people who are established in the market and looking at, sort of, like I say, becoming more of a hybrid site. And so that really shows that, I think, and I'd like to think, the increased acceptance of containers in the self-storage industry, definitely.
I think that's incredible. So 2/3 of new members in the SSA are some way, shape or form connected to containers. That is unbelievable. Yeah. That is awesome.
Yeah, it's great. And for people to be in an association, which, and it has been touched upon before, that containers, and probably rightfully so, up to 5-10 years ago, when they were just, you had old containers dumped in the field, and that was seen as like, that's containerised storage. I'd like to think that, you know, Willbox has been a little bit part of changing the perception of the containers.
Yeah.
You know, you've seen your great containers come yourself with the line doors and sprayed white on the frame. These units are coming out and they're branded, they're premium grade. We're trying to listen to what people are wanting with increased airflow coming with the vents. So it's yeah, the perception of containers and then being accepted into associations and then having more of the breakout rooms in recent conferences where containerized storage is now becoming part and parcel of the wholesale storage and not just the lesser younger brother. It's great, and long may it continue. I think it's something that we as Willbox have a responsibility to ensure that it continues by giving the best service that we do, but also people who are coming into the industry ensure it does by giving it a good name. So when they do set up the sites, obviously it's not just about the container; it's running a good business as well. And we want the whole business to grow, the whole industry to grow, and certainly not just our own.
Yeah, and we're not. I want to get across that we're not talking about banged up containers. We all know them container sites that are banged up, leaky. You wouldn't store anything that you didn't want to get water in. I mean, there's one of those near us, and it serves a purpose for certain people. I get it that if you want a container £15 a week and to store some old stuff in there, I don't know, building materials that you don't mind getting wet or whatever it is, it serves a purpose, absolutely. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about high-end containers that you could store your stuff in and you wouldn't have a moment's doubt that it would be safe, it'd be secure, it'd be dry. It's just it's just different to indoor storage. And what people have got to remember is that not everybody can afford a £1 million shop fit, a £2 million shop fit for indoor self-storage. It is a way into the market for so many people. We started, first of all, with a container site. And we couldn't have done it any other way. We started with a container site with 87 units, and then we got our big site in Willoughby indoor, and it's a hybrid site because we had a big car park, and we've got now 52 containers on there. Why wouldn't we utilize that car park? Why wouldn't you want to? Because the people who want to go indoor, absolutely fine. But there's also a different part of your clientele that would prefer just a drive-up unit. There might be a builder, might be a plumber, or there might be somebody who just thinks, you know what, it's a lot easier than getting a trolley, going through all these narrow corridors. I can just pull up outside, I can handball my stuff in, and I can be away. And so we've got to listen to our customers and do exactly what they want.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think the other thing with containers and having a container site over an indoor storage site is you do have a little bit more flexibility of location when you are looking to set up, because people are going to be going up to the drive up units. So we expect them to be turning up in their vans or in their cars. So if it means they're a little bit out of the city centre, then and that's where you're going to be doing the setup, then that's expected by the customer. But I think in terms of sort of listening to the customer and them understanding that this is a container and showing them the photos of how containers now look with the sparkly floor, the vents and everything that we can offer, how secure they are as well. That yeah, it's certainly the way into the self-storage industry if for a new starter. Really is the quickness and flexibility of getting units on the floor to start the business going is there that you can't really compete with it.
Yeah, and the barrier to entry, by the way, for container sites is a lot less. I mean, just talking to you today, it's got me excited again about container sites. You don't need to have, and you can do asset finance as well. You can do asset finance to get the containers, and then you can pay it off over a number of years. I think that container sites, if you want to get in self-storage, is probably the best way to get into self-storage, unless you sat on millions and millions of pounds. Do you know, Tom, the biggest problem that I had when I opened Beverley, it's a weird shape, and you're going to laugh at it. And so to plan where we put the containers, me and my dad drew to plan, and I say to plan, to scale. It definitely wasn't. It was the best we could possibly do. And we used to get these little cardboard cutouts. We had a little cardboard area where the land was, and then we had little cardboard cutouts of the containers to try and plan in exactly where they'd go. And needless to say, it never ever ended up like that. And I didn't know about you guys when I opened, but you guys actually do a plan, an aerial view, don't you, for people, which I think is incredibly helpful.
Yeah. So something that we really pride ourselves on at Willbox is it's not we sell a product. Obviously, we sell containers, but we really want to offer a service and almost a turnkey. Well, it is a turnkey service to anyone looking to set up a self storage. We're a small team here. We know we're not going to be the largest container supplier in the UK, but we work to that if anyone is looking at setting up a self storage site, then for a couple of £100, we will quite happily next day jump on the train, jump in the car. Sometimes we go up on the plane, and we'll go out. We'll send the drone up. We'll take some pictures, some aerial shots. We'll do all the measurements of the yard. We'll give advice on the facilities that are in place, what we think is also needed, and also the suitability of the location. We'll take everything back to on site here, where we have our own CAD engineers and our own planners who obviously work with our conversion guys for the fabrication side, but they also do the plans of the land. So they will give the best overall footprint available for utilising the space. And that will take into account obviously all the drive-up factors, gates, security, and we'll give advice on land, and also looking at probably some things that people don't move on to at the beginning stage is the two-story aspect. From the outset, we will always say, right, if you're looking at going to two-story, if you've got the capability or you've been allowed to go two-story, we'll factor that in straight from the start, so you don't have to do anything retrospectively. So we will give a plan for two-story, for one-story, and it opens up all the possibilities straight away, which to someone new to the industry, it might seem a little bit daunting. So we're quite happy to come and do a little bit of hand-holding. And we've had customers here which we've been supplying for 5 years, and we still are with them every step of the way, from their new land agreement, going out, looking at the land, setting it up for them, doing the plans, and getting the containers delivered from our own transport. Where the drivers are the guys who really deserve a lot of the plaudits, who deliver our containers, because they're the ones who level it up, and they give the on-site recommendations when delivering the containers as well. So yeah, I'm glad it worked for you, Dean, and it's great to go out and meet customers at their own site. And we then, when we're back in our office here, we can have a real understanding of, when we're talking to people on the phone, what areas they're talking about when they're saying, oh, I've got a bit of space in the corner here. Could I fit an 8-foot? Could I fit a multi-door? What do you think about this? We've got the pictures. We can give our advice and then make and solve the problem for them.
Do you know what, Tommy? You're making me feel really bad, because I've stopped doing two-story. I think I've got 4 containers at the top, or 5 containers at the top, and I've stopped. I haven't done any more, and because we found that people, for 20-foot containers, it was incredibly difficult to sell those 20-foot containers at the top. But you have like a little gantry walkway through, don't you, that makes it more accessible, and you can split the containers up. And I've just been sat here thinking, shit, I need to get you guys down to have a look, and just because I'm not the expert in this, you do this and see this every single day. I would love you guys to come up and just have a look and say, like, all right, Dean, this is what we do. We can get you an extra however many square foot here, because we're 90% full, and we don't have to push Beverly at all. It sounds terrible. We've only got to be probably 40 or 50% as good as we possibly be at Beverly, because we've got a limited amount of containers there. And I'm just looking now thinking, why the hell haven't I done this before? Why haven't I got in touch with you guys before? And all of a sudden the pennies just dropped. And so whenever you guys are up here, I need you to come and have a look and just give me some advice. In terms of two-story, do you see any pushbacks from people having a 20-foot container on the second floor?
I think you hit the nail on the head really early when you said that 20-foot containers on second floor. It can be a bit daunting if you had, you see a lot of sites where you have the wheel up stairs that go up to it, and you'd open the container and use it as a whole 20-foot container. Sometimes that space is too much for the contents going in there, because it's a little bit too heavy. The way that I like to think of it is, normally the larger the container, or the larger the space that someone is looking at hiring out, the larger and the heavier the goods going into that space. Hence why the top of containers, which you touched upon earlier, where we have 20-foot, or if you have 2 20-foots on the floor, a 40-foot container the top of containers has a walkway through it, so it's actually split in half, the container. So you have 2 80-square-foot units either side of the walkway, which will run down the length of your ground floor row.
Love it.
That's obviously a smaller storage space. So in terms of pushback from people, we generally don't, because it is smaller contents and less heavy goods going up there, so then having to take them up the stairs. So it's not as if they're trying to lug fridge freezers or sofas or anything up the stairs, because they've got that smaller storage space anyway. If they did want to have the heavier stuff, they would have gone ground floor at the beginning. So yeah, the topper units have certainly become something that is one of our most popular in-house converted container. We do them in 20 foot. We've also come up with the 40 foot topper, which has 4 areas or 4 rooms upstairs. So to the right and to the left, you'd have 2 doors, which each have their own area of 74 square foot. With the walkway that runs all the way through, you could put lighting in the walkway, you could put perspex ceiling in there to have natural light. So the capabilities and the opportunities for the second floor is certainly there. But we can do it retrospective as well. If people are listening and they think, oh, hang on, I've already done the ground floor and I haven't even thought about toppers. It's not something that's the end of it. We can go out, we'll have a look at the site and see what we need to, if there's any levelling up or anything that needs sort of changing before we went up another level. So it's certainly not the end if people haven't done it or haven't thought about it yet. And happy to help anyone who is thinking, this could be something. So and you would be obviously top of the list to help.
Cheers, I appreciate it. Yeah, and one thing I would say as well is that at Clough Road, our new indoor site is doing absolutely fantastic. And the problem is it's gone too well, if that's a problem, if that can be possible. And so we've had to order phase 2 very, very quickly. That's the upstairs. But the problem is anybody who does indoor self-storage knows that a lift can take up to 16 weeks, especially now, from order to actually getting installed. And so we're getting phase 2 in before we've got a lift in situ. And so all the team are saying, what we're going to do, the customers are going to hate it. And I'm like, no, we're the expert. If we're worried, then the customers are going to be worried. If we're not worried, then the customers will follow our lead and won't be worried either. If we make something of it, then guess what? They're going to make something of it as well. They're going to believe it's worse than it is. And so we just act like it's normal. We don't even mention the lift because the customers, in all likelihood, have never used self-storage before. They're using it for the first time. They don't know what to expect. So as long as we're polite and helpful, they won't know any difference. And I always go back to when I went to a place in Armadillo, I'm a bit sad and I go around to self-storage companies and just pretend I'm going to store there just to see what the process is like, what the sales are like. And this girl in Armadillo, she wasn't the manager, she wasn't the assistant manager, she was just a person working there. And she took me up in the lift first of all, and then we went up these stairs in a little weird corridor, about 10 steps. And she didn't make anything of it whatsoever. And because she didn't make anything of it, I didn't make anything of it. She didn't draw attention to it. And so I think that's what I'm getting at. The more you draw attention to a problem, if you're like almost apologetic and say, I'm really sorry you've got to go up these stairs or you're in the attic or whatever, then the more they're going to make of it as well. There's somebody that I know who actually listens to this and some advice, because he was struggling to sell he didn't have a lift and he was struggling to sell the first floor. So the second floor really. And I said that the problem is you're being apologetic. You're almost apologizing for the fact that people have to go up the stairs. You're their expert. They're going to follow your lead. And if you're worried, they're going to sense that they should be worried. And so as long as you don't make anything of it, then I think that you're going to be okay, especially like you say, with the smaller size units.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not a case of masking over it or anything like that. If they did see anything that is a problem, they will note it. A customer will note it. But drawing attention to something which you're highlighting, there's no need to do it. There's certainly no need to do it. And look, if you are an expert in an industry, you already know that something could have improvement. And it's not a problem. It's just a challenge. And it's just a case of just writing, let's improve. And I think the whole thing with business is continuous improvement anyway. So we're always looking at improving. We're always looking at adapting and evolving a little bit. So these things are always going to be there, but we don't need to highlight it externally to any customer. It's something that we keep in-house, isn't it?
Yeah. Just a real quick question. When you're planning out an actual site, then do you have what you advise that the gap to be between containers? Because for me, I keep on, I go between on trying to maximize the amount of space we get to fit the most containers in, to actually making sure that the customers have got enough room to pass each other at our Beverley site is very, very small. And at one point, there is only literally an 8-foot gap between one container to the next container across the other side. And so it is very, very, very tight. But do you know what? Again, we've never, ever had a complaint. The only time we've ever had a complaint, because the reason why I had a complaint at Beverley is because it's always been like that. So they've always had that expectation. At Willoughby, however, we've done it in stages. So we've done it in, maybe 10 containers, and another two, and we've got up to 52 containers. All of a sudden, customers are complaining because they haven't got the space they're being used to. And it's almost like we've taken away something. We've taken away the space, where I look at Beverley and I think, holy shit, at Willoughby, you don't know how lucky you guys are, because you can get 2 cars past. It's a 16-foot gap between one container to another container. So you can actually fit 2 cars passing by. And you guys don't know how lucky you are. But because we started with a massive area and they had so much room to turn around, etc., that we've almost took something away from them. So do you guys recommend any sort of size gap between the containers?
When we set out a plan, we will obviously, first thing we're looking at doing is optimizing the land space, what rentable area you've got on the land space. So we also then need to balance that up with making the yard as operational as possible for the customers. We tend to generally start with around about a 5-metre gap, but it is then, the plans aren't set in stone. If someone will come back to us and say, oh, let's drop that down to 4.5 metres, let's drop that down to 4 metres, absolutely fine. We'll move that and we'll have a play with it, because if that can then in turn mean that you can get another few units on land, why would you not? And if that's going to be your first phase, like you say, someone's coming in and already seeing that it's there, you're not taking it away from the customer, it's how the yard is set up, then there's no problem at all. And we will also do that ourselves. We'll make the offerings of saying, okay, if you had a 5-metre gap, this is how many units you had. But if we go down to 4 metres, then we can look at getting this many more units. And it's the customer's decision as well. So it's the self-storage site operators, final decision. At the end of the day, we will give as much advice as we want, and as the customer will listen to. But ultimately, the decision will come down to the operator. But I think anywhere between 4 to 5 metres is ample, really.
Yeah, sure. I've just Googled 5 foot is 16.4 feet. And so basically mine at Beverley is 2.5 meters at certain points. So you can't actually make a turn. Your car has to do a 3-point turn to get around. And it is tight, but do you know what? We've never, ever had a complaint, because it's always been like that. And so it just shows you that you can work with it. It doesn't have to be this all massive, all singing, all dancing site. We've got 87 units on the site, and we haven't maximized the upstairs. Like, after talking to you today, I feel like this has been so beneficial for me personally, because finally I feel like the penny has dropped, and we can do more with a 2-story now. We can actually hopefully get you guys down and have a look and let us know what you recommend. So you've actually got a container site as well. So you don't just supply containers. You've got, is it Woodpecker, your self-storage container site?
Yes. So we opened Woodpecker in June last year. We did originally have a self-storage site in our parent company's land over just on Southampton docks, but due to a change of business and wanting to focus really on the logistics and transportation side of that bit of land, we closed that site and then set up an acre site here up at Nursling in Southampton called Woodpecker. It's an acre site. It's going to have about 330 rooms on it. It's going to be good. It's going to be big. We've got about 60 rooms so far. Utilisation is good, and everything is all done in-house. It's brilliant, all through obviously Willbox. So we do all the in-house conversion here. So all the top units that we've got on site, we're building that maybe 500 feet in our 2 workshops, and they've been designed by our own CAD engineers here. It's all done with our own transport as well. So any sort of lifting that's happening, we're doing it here. So we're always learning and using our own expertise of setting up other people's sites for Woodpecker as well, which is brilliant. And I think before we came on and before you pressed record, we sort of said how much of a double-edged sword this is, of how brilliant that you've got an operating facility here which has our own units and converted units here. But what a great advert it is for what Willbox can produce. So we're saying to people, yeah, we know what we're talking about with containerised self-storage. Come and have a chat with us, and our service is good. And we've also got a facility that I'm looking at just out the window now, which we can walk people around. You know, I'm more than happy that anyone who wants to come in to Willbox, I will take them around the woodpecker yard, and they can see the capabilities and how they can make their site similar to woodpecker with the 2 stories. I can show them all the toppers, the stairway, the walkways, and the offices we have on site as well. So yeah, it's woodpecker is awesome, and I hope you can visit as well soon, Dean.
Do you know, I'm on the website now. I just googled it because I've looked at it ages ago and I couldn't remember it. And so for anybody who wants to know, it's woodpeckerselfstorage.co.uk. It looks awesome. It says see the latest from our social feed, and you actually see these toppers. You see, I am so impressed, and you the way you've done the yard as well. You've got like concrete slabs down underneath the container. There's been literally no expense spared, and like you say, I mean, I'd have given anything to be able to go and see another self-storage container site and have a look around before I started my container site. It just looks wonderful. I'm really, really impressed. This looks awesome, Tom.
No, that's great. Yeah, yeah. Thank you for those kind words. We are extremely proud of it. I think one of the things that we are so proud of is that everything in there, containerized, has been done through us. So we've bought the containers in from China ourselves. We've converted containers. We've planned the yard ourselves. It's all done in house, and we haven't had to outsource anything. And that's something that has given us what we were considered experts in the industry. We've learned even more by doing this. So yeah, it's something we're extremely proud of, and we're still going with it. And we've still got more to do. So yeah, I look forward to when the updates on the social and the website happen, so you guys can all see it. But like I say, anyone who does want to come see it, please give me a call or email. I'm sure we'll put the link in the bio down the bottom of this, and yeah, arrange a visit, and I'd be more than happy to show people what's about at Woodpecker at the moment.
I've just Googled how far it is from Beverley to Southampton. It's only a 4 hour 25 drive. I'm gonna try and come next week. I would really enjoy to. I'm just a geek. So we've talked about, obviously, all about, there's so many positives for a container site, a self-storage site. For me, it's the fact that you're not at risk as much as you are in a normal indoor self-storage. You can do the phases as and when you like, as and when demand needs. And you're also your cash position as well. You can do asset finance. It seems to be people's way into self-storage. So we've talked about the positives. What are the challenges when opening a self-storage site that people overlook sometimes? Because I often know I'm quite a cheerleader for self-storage. Now I feel as though, I was just talking to Janice the other day, and I feel as though I've got more of a responsibility now because we've got more and more people listening. We had 12,000 downloads last month. And so I don't want to be a person who just says all the good stuff and don't talk about the bad stuff, because then people might think, I don't know, blame me for opening a self-storage and it doesn't work. So what are some of the challenges for opening a container site?
Yeah, I think it's very true. There is a responsibility to be as honest as we can with opening self-storage site, and there is always going to be downsides. I think at the moment, getting hold of land and the price of it is extremely tricky. On what we do, the container price has risen. We were selling containers circa around £1,600–1,700 2 years ago. They've now gone up over the £3,000 mark. So that makes it obviously a bit more difficult for people for the initial setups. And now business rates on containers as well needs to be factored in for people making that decision. And something that we did really touch upon earlier is the expectation levels. I think it's been a great couple of years for the self-storage industry, and obviously for people who are selling containers as well. It has been a good couple of years because we run in parallel. That isn't normality. We have been in a very, very high-rising bubble. It's not going to pop or anything like that. But we have to remember what times are like when we're not hit with pandemics and coming on the back of pandemics and things like that. We have to remember a bit of normality to it all. So I think people being realistic is probably the biggest challenge. Not getting too carried away. We have to keep our feet on the ground with it all, certainly.
Yeah, the biggest thing for me is that so the expectations, I 100% agree. So I've been helping a few people recently when they're getting new sites and they're doing the plans, etc., cash flow forecasts, and they say to me, send me the sheet over, and they say, I'm saying, how many square foot do you expect to get? You know, and what's the reasons for this? And sometimes it's like 600, 700 square foot, and I'm thinking, do you know what? Even Clough Road, it's on a major road network in Hull. We plan for less than 500 fill up square foot every single month. And the reason why I do that is not because I expect that to happen. I'm thinking worst case scenario, right? What is the worst case scenario? I know my numbers because I know what Hull did, I know what Beverly did, and so I know the worst case scenario, we will hit 400 square foot per month, and so I've got to make sure that my cash expectations are all based around that number. I hope for a lot better, and we've hit a lot better. We're 9 months ahead of projections, but my cash flow is all projected around filling up at 400, and so many people go into this thinking, oh yeah, well I want to hit this, or I'm going to hit this, but I would like people just to take a step back and just and maybe decrease their expectations, because all of us, if you're filling up at 500 square foot a month over a year, that's a solid site. It's a solid site. But if your expectations are 1,000 square foot a month over a year, then you're going to be disappointed. And so you've got to be very, very careful with your expectations. I always say to people, self-storage is never, ever going to get you rich quick, but it will get you wealthy long-term, because the fundamentals, the principles, the first principles are all there. They're all correct, but we've just got to not get carried away with them. We've got to be patient, and we can't overextend ourselves. And the worst thing in the world, because these are all mistakes that I made in my first self-storage facility. I didn't realize about the fill-up rate, what was going to happen, how much cash I needed, the surplus cash. And I was in a world of pain. I had a £60,000 bill due in 14 days, and I had no way of paying it. And I was under so much stress. And with Clough Road, because I've learned, because I've educated myself, because I know that I'm going to have lots of expenses in the early days and very, very little revenue coming in, it's been seamless. It really has, because we've planned it. We've made sure we've got a deal with a landlord. We've made sure the rents are in line. We've made sure that the early rents are cheaper than the later rents. There's so many different things you can do to protect yourself. And so I feel like people need to go into this with their eyes wide open. And as long as your eyes are wide open, self-storage is the best vehicle that I know of to create long-term wealth. I love it. And just one question. I've been hearing a lot about business rates. We haven't been affected too much at the minute about business rates. Can you just elaborate a little bit more about business rates? What do you mean about the business rates for container sites?
Well, it's a little bit of a dubious one, really, at the moment, and it's something that seems to be brought up a lot at the association's conferences that we've been attending. But the business rates are now being factored in to containers, and the containers on the floor, which they weren't before. And it seems to be changing, or also very variable between company and company, even when they're in very close vicinity. So it's something that I think is having a bit of a negative effect on people looking at starting, and it's something that people do need to take note of if they are looking at starting or looking at extending, that to get some solid professional advice from there. And I know there's a few people who around the industry will certainly be able to advise on that. Because it's something that we do have to factor in now. It looks like it is something that's going to be statutory, and we have to make sure that you factor it into your finances, and certainly for your startup, always get that checked out.
Yeah, because the business rates, I was talking to Ewan down in Devon, and he was telling me about the business rates that have been affected. And he was like, just be careful, Dean, because apparently it's going to be affecting everybody. And then I was also talking to Graham in York, and he's been affected by it. And for whatever reason, luckily or not, we haven't been affected by the business rates yet around our area. And there's also a few other container sites that haven't been affected. And so when they do start charging business rates, it is going to be a game changer for this part of the industry. It's not saying that it's not going to work out, but you might have to be, your pricing strategy might have to be a little bit different, rather than a lot of people still around the area and a bit more north than me are still doing £25 for a week for a container, for a 20-foot container. I don't know how they do that. And it's obviously because they bought the containers years and years and years ago. And so therefore the return on investment is going to be fantastic, even at £25 a week, whereas I'm probably paying more than double for a container than they're paying. So therefore, if I charge £50, the return on investment is going to be similar. So yeah, business rates. I will take some names off you, because I would love to, at the end of this call, I would love to get somebody on the podcast just to highlight this, because if I'm honest, I don't really know how much business rates are going to be for a container. I've had £5 per container, £10 a container, and I don't know. We haven't had any solid information about it. So I would love to get
and I think that's
on.
one of the problems with it is there isn't, the solid information is quite scarce, and we're hearing different types of rates, and like I said, it's very seems to change on location, from a difference from, say, Devon up to York, but also in terms of from site to site in the same region. So yeah, it's something which is very, very fluffy and loose at the moment, but yeah, something to be aware of. But yeah, more than happy to pass on some info at the end of this.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. And that's not to take away, by the way, for the containers. I stand by it. I think containers, that they're really exciting. And I echo exactly what you said, Tom. I think it's very, very hard to try and find a site, and it's just got to go out there. And I always say, like the Americans call it, driving for dollars, because sometimes you can't find the sites. There's a site, I'm going to go and see a site for an indoor self-storage, a new build that's going to be built back end of next year. We've got a meeting in 2 weeks' time about it, and I'm so excited about it. And it's not on Google. It's not on Rightmove. It's nowhere, and it's only because I drove past it that I saw the sign. It was a crazy little sign, and now it's a multi-million-pound venture that we could be going on because of it. So driving for dollars, go out there, have a look around local areas, and they might not be online. So that's the beauty of it. So yeah, Tom, is there anything I've left out, buddy? Is there anything that you want to talk about that I've actually left out?
No. I think you covered it all, Dean. Thank you.
I've had an awesome. I love talking self-storage, buddy. So thank you very much for your time. Where do people find you? Then you mentioned before about getting in contact, email, phone, etc. If you say it, buddy, we'll link it in the show notes below.
Yeah, lovely. Well, my email address it's nice and simple. It's tom@willbox.co.uk. That's WILLBOX. Or please feel free to give me a call on 07738 958722. I'm on LinkedIn as well. So anyone who wants to connect or ping me a message on there, please feel free to. And even if it's just to ask a couple of questions or anything like that, please, I'm more than happy to have a chat. I think I'm going to claim I love containers as much as Dean loves self-storage. So yeah, we could be in a bit of competition there.
And can I just echo as well the fact that I love the fact you guys have set up an actual self-storage, because you know the exact pain points that your customers are going to go through, because you're going to go through them yourself as well. And it's a standalone business. It's going to do well on its own, but also it helps so much sell your containers. People can go down, have a look at it. I mean, you've even got me thinking about, right, okay, what day can I come to Southampton and have a look? 4.5 hours away. So I just take my hat off to you guys, because that's next level customer care and business acumen. I love it.
That's great. Yeah, thank you. It's something that we're really proud of. And like you say, there is pain points that we have gone through, that we're going through, and it's all a learning process in setting this up. So from what we had in our minds of self-storage already, we're living and breathing through it now as well. So yeah, it's a great thing to have, and more than happy for people to come down and have a look and come and meet us and have a cup of coffee.
Yeah, and I can definitely say that you guys really, really care about the customer as well. So from my point of view, from you guys supplying us, thanks for all you do, pal. We really, really appreciate it.
That's very kind. Thank you, Dean.